In this lesson, we will learn about self-join. Self-join combines different information from the same table after joining the table to itself. As we see here, we have self-join. We have two tables that are the same table. And the self-join combine between them. So here we have an example. We want on the first column the worker, and on the second column we want the name of the manager, the manager of this worker. So in the table of the employees, we have the employee ID, the worker, and also we have the ID of the manager of the employee. The first time we have the employee, and the second time their managers. And we want to connect this table within itself by different columns of the tables. So if we connect this, in the first table we'll get the worker, the employee ID, the worker, and from the same table but the join to itself, we'll get the employee that this worker reports to. So it will be like this. We have the employee ID 1, 3, 4, 5, the name of the worker, Nancy Davilio, Janet Levering, and so on. The ID of the worker they report to, it means the ID of their employee. And if we connect it to the same table, we can get the employee, that this employee is now the manager. The manager that this employee reports to. Nancy reports to the employee that is the manager, Andrew. And Janet reports to the employee that is the manager, Andrew, and so on. Let's see it in the SQL server, it will be more clear. So to understand it, let's run the employees table. Select asterisk from employees table. And now we see that we have the employee ID, the first name, last name, title, and so on. And also, if we scroll it, we have the reports to. So let's extract only what we need. We need the employee ID. We need the last name and the first name. So let's write the first name and the last name. Now what we need is the reports to. Let's run only this. So what we learn from this? We learn that this employee, Nancy, reports to employee number 2, to Andrew. So the reports to is the manager. Now let's see. So we have the employee, let's call her as worker, and run it. So we have the worker, her name is Nancy, this is her last name, and we have the manager. The manager is the employee number 2, is Andrew. Andrew is employee, but he doesn't have any manager because he's the CEO, so it's null. So what we want to the name of the managers. We want that Andrew will be here. Instead of 2, we want Andrew. How we get Andrew to be here? We can self-join this table to itself, and now the worker, the employee ID worker 2, will give us the name of the employee. So we will do join two employees. Here let's call it W as worker, and for this table let's call it M as manager. Now we want to connect between them, so we'll do on. What we connect, first time from the employee table we will connect the report to, and let's erase it, the worker and the manager, so we understand what we extract. So first time from the worker, from this table, we want to connect the reports to, because we want the employee, the name, last name, and reports to, but we want now that the second table that we connect, the reports will be connected to the manager, and we want to receive the employee ID. So these two will connect to these two, and we'll get the name of the employee that is a manager. Because we connect the table to itself, we need to add the name of the table, because it appears in both of them. So the SQL doesn't know which of the employee ID you need to refer to the W or to M. So let's call it W, because this is the worker. We want the name of the worker, and we want the last name of the worker. We want also the reports to from the worker. From this, let's look at this as a worker table. But now we want this worker to join itself to understand what the name of this employee, because this worker, this manager, is also a worker. So the reports to is a manager, and want the manager to connect to itself, to the employees table, because this manager is also an employee, and we want to understand its name. So the W from the worker, this is all the worker table. Now from the manager, what we want the employee ID. We'll get 2 and 2 because we connect between them. We want from the manager, we want the first name, and we want from the manager the last name. Now what we get is if we look at this as the employee table, as the worker table, now we'll get another 4 rows that we look at them as the manager table. This is what we get. Let's understand it. This is the employee table. Now we have 1 is the employee, so it's Nancy. This is her last name. She reports to her manager. Now this employee is a manager. What is his name? His name is Andrew, and this is his last name. Let's give it a name. So the employee now is a worker. First name, last name of the worker. Reports to, it means that she reports to her manager, as this is employee manager. This is the first name and last name of her manager. Now run it, and it's more clear. Worker, Nancy, last name, her last name. She reports to her manager, so we connect between the one that reports to the manager here in the connection. Who is her manager? Andrew. Andrew is the manager of Nancy. And Michael is employee number 6, and he reports to employee number 5. The employee number 5 is a manager, and his name is Stephen. So Stephen reports to Michael. Notice that we don't have the worker number 2, because Stephen is a worker himself is a worker. He has a manager, Andrew. But Andrew is not a worker, he's just a manager. He doesn't report to no one. If you remember, when we did select asterisk from employee, when we run it, we see that Andrew, if we run on the employee number 2, he doesn't report to no one, null. He's the CEO, so he's not a worker. He's a worker, but he doesn't have a manager. Steven, on the other hand, is a manager, but he's also a worker for other manager. He has someone above him. So he's a manager. We see that there are a lot of employees that report to him, but he himself reports to someone. So in one table he is employee, but in the other table he is also a manager. So this is why he exists in the employee table. Andrew not. He doesn't report to no one, so he's only a manager of these employees. And if we want to organize it, so we can combine, we can erase the employee ID. We don't need the employee ID. And we can combine between the first name and last name by plus parentheses and plus, let's call it as worker, and the second one is a worker that and here we don't need the reports too, so because it's the ID, we don't need it. We just need the, and we don't need the employee ID from the manager. We don't need it. I delete all the IDs. The manager first name plus and plus the manager last name plus, and now we can call it as manager. So if we run this, let's look at the first one. We have Nancy Davolio, and their manager is Andrew Fuller. If we run this, we get what we want. Nancy Davolio, manager is Andrew, and this is what we want to